All right, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's product training with Blue Triangle. Today we're going to talk about the Real User Monitoring module, and there's really a lot to cover here today, and we won't make it to every corner of the module, but what we'll do is highlight the key pages and features and functionality that you should know about and be able to use for your reporting and analytics. All right, so my name is Mark, and I'm the support manager here at Blue Triangle, and I do these trainings each week about various topics related to web performance, analytics, and really how to use Blue Triangle to solve problems. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As far as the agenda today, obviously we're going to be covering the Real User Monitoring module, and like I mentioned, there's more than these 4 pages in the module, but we're not going to be able to cover it all today. But what I've done is selected 4 of the more important pages, more insightful pages that are in the Real User Monitoring module, and we're going to walk through how to use each one and what features and functionality are available on each of these pages. So that's going to be the performance overview, the performance detail, the aggregate waterfall, and the errors explorer. You may know we used to have a JavaScript errors page. The name has been changed to Errors Explorer. There's a variety of new errors that we began collecting, including CSP violations and even our new SDK crash reporting. So since it's way more than just JavaScript and CSP violation type of errors, we changed the name to Errors Explorer. I think that makes a lot more sense. So that's what the Errors Explorer is. Hopefully you've heard of all of these pages and you've been there before, but if you haven't, that's not a problem. We're going to walk through, like I said, we're going to walk through each one and point out some of the really cool features and whatnot on the pages. The last thing is Q&A at the end. Like I mentioned, if any questions come up that you have during the session, feel free to just drop those into the chat box or the questions window, and I'll be happy to answer those toward the end. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the Blue Triangle portal. So I'm going to pull that up now. So we're going to start out with the Real User Monitoring Performance Overview page, and that's where I am right now. As you can see, right now we're looking at a heat map of the globe and representing performance from the various countries and regions across the world. And one of the cool features here is you can click and drill into a particular region. For example, we're looking at the United States right now, and we're able to see the individual states' performance as well. Looks like Wyoming is our problem location right now as far as the United States goes. And this data is our demo e-commerce global site. This is just test and demo data that we use for our trainings. All right, and you can just jump back to the world map by clicking that button up there in the top right. All right, so to give you a little more context, the information you're looking at is listed up here in this top drip. We call them the quick filters. So we're looking at one day with essentially no filters applied. Now you can go in and begin to slice and dice the data in our filter options, and you can do that by clicking the filter icon up here in the right. And inside of this, you'll be able to filter on really a variety of things. It's broken out into sections for marketing, like campaigns, marketing campaigns, or an A/B testing segment, or returning versus new visitors, data center location, traffic segment, page group, and page name. And you can also search on URL. This is a new one we added. I think it's been several months now, so it's not quite as new as it used to be. But that is a really cool feature as well. You're able to choose URL search option instead of page name, and you're able to go into here and just type a wildcard or an exact match URL, a wildcard substring that is, and hit apply filters, and that'll filter the data down to just those matching data points. All right, and then of course browsers and devices, you're able to choose, for example, let's just look at desktop data or mobile data or both. Operating systems, browsers, bot traffic or no bot traffic, country, region, and as well as any custom categories that you have configured for your site. Now, these filter options are always going to be available for you on all of the pages that we're going to be covering today. All right, so moving down the page, there's a couple more things I'd like to point out. One of the main features of this page is this overview table, and it shows you all of the data broken out by page, as well as for each page you get all of the metrics for that particular page. So that would be page views, back-end metrics, network metrics, front-end metrics, time to DOM interactive, time to interactive, as well as the web vitals over here to the right. So we have largest contentful paint, total blocking time, and first input delay. And of course you're able to export this table, and you can do that using this button over here in the right. Export it to a CSV and open that up on your own and do any analysis that you'd like offline. So another feature of this page is the ability to see, what URLs make up this particular page name. So this little button here, it says show top 50 URLs for this page. So if we click that, it's going to show us all of the URLs, the top 50 that is, that make up the product detail page. And for each of these URLs, you're able to see the same information broken out by URL as far as the page views and all of the metrics in the table here. Also, you can actually click here to drill into a particular URL even further. So that'll take you into the real user performance detail page. We'll be getting to this in just a second, but what you were able to do there was drill into data just for this particular URL. Okay, and as far as linking to other areas of the portal, there's more you can do. If you jump to analysis for this page, you click this blue triangle button, you can jump to the performance details, which is where we just were. We'll be getting there in a second. The aggregate waterfall, we'll be getting there as well as the errors explorer, the bounce and exit analysis, and the revenue calculator. So this allows you to easily jump between the different pages in blue triangle without having to go through and open up the filter options and choose the page. So this makes it a lot easier if you just use these buttons here. All right, so that's kind of the key feature on this page. Down below there are a few different graphs broken out, basically performance broken out by country, region, browser, ISP, and the traffic source. So pretty straightforward. You get a graph of each location with their respective performance, and you can toggle on and off these metrics just by clicking the legend items here. So you can get this information in a graph or a table. by clicking this button up here in the top right. All right, so that is the performance overview. The next page we're going to look at is the performance detail. So I'm gonna just click it from here. We're gonna start fresh on this page. Well, it looks like we still have our URL search in there. I'm going to go into the filters and just remove that. And while I can show you how to do that, you would come down to the page segmentation section, choose the filter selector, change it from URL search to page name, and then we'll just, we won't choose any pages for now. We're just going to hit apply filters. And so we should be looking at unfiltered data right now, with the exception of bot traffic. We're going to just automatically exclude bot traffic. All right, so this is the real user performance detail. This is probably the most common page that you'll find yourself using in the real user monitoring module. So up at the top, you get a summary of performance as well as page views. All of the metrics that we have for you are listed up here in the cards. You're able to click these different cards, and that'll update the graph over here to the left. As a matter of fact, let me show you what I'm talking about. So we can actually choose a few page names. Let's say we're looking at 3 particular page names. I'm going to hit apply filters. So we're looking at the product detail page, the category page, and the home page. So a couple of things you can do here. Right now we're looking at the combined pages average, but you could also look at the totals here as well. Obviously that increases the numbers across the board, with the exception of page views, of course. Now you can also, like I mentioned before, you can click these cards and that'll change the graph over here to the left. You can see, respectively how each one is doing as far as the metric goes. So moving down the page, this is the performance graph. So right now we're looking at the performance for all of these pages up here. All of the metrics in these cards are available to you over to the right in the legend. You can click to hide or show those just by clicking these legend items here. And another cool little trick is you can click the bar up above, and that's going to update this graph down below with just the information for that particular page name. All right. So you may be wondering, what is this shaded region? As we scroll down the page, that actually represents the information that's shown here in the scatter plot. So right now we're looking at measurements where object level detail was collected. You could change that to display page and object level detail, which means just show me everything that we collected. So this over to the left is all of the page views, and then over to the right, this is all of the page views for the selected session. And by default, the screen here is going to automatically choose the page view with the slowest onload. In this case, onload is the default metric there. So if we click on another one of these, you'll see the graph to the right update. And you'll also see this URL hit update here. So you'll be able to see the exact URL that we hit here with this particular measurement. And if you click on it, you get more information down below. So there's a performance breakdown. You can see some of the performance, the request and response, processing time, the DOM, and some other things here. And then over to the right, we have all of the details for this individual measurement. So we can see it came from Taiwan. This was the browser version. Here is the exact time of the measurement and the page name. And we can see all sorts of great information about this particular measurement. Now, one thing I'd like to point out in this section is this eyeball here means that you can click to drill in for deeper analysis. So let's say this customer session ID, we're interested in seeing, what other pages did this particular customer visit. You can click that eyeball, and that'll take you to our real user session lookup performance detail page. And this is for a deeper analysis on a specific session, a specific IP or URL, user agent string, any of the options listed here. You're able to do a lookup on that particular thing there. I may have chosen a bad example for this. Let's try another one. How about the blue triangle session ID? Let's look at that. Right. So as you can see, this session, of course, as we looked at before, only had the one page view. But you get the idea of how this page can be used. It can be extremely useful for deep dive analysis on individual page views. So moving back over to the page, if we scroll down, there's one more section of graphs that I'd like to show you, and that is the waterfalls. So the object level detail waterfall is going to show up. It's the option here in the middle. This is going to show you, obviously, all of the resources that loaded on the page, as well as their performance. We have all of the metrics in here: request, start and end, app cache, DNS, TCP, and response. And you can see that information for each of the items that loaded on the page, each of the objects or resources that loaded on the page. Now, what's really cool is overlaid on this graph, we see our performance milestones. So right now, it looks like there wasn't a time to interactive for this particular measurement, but we do see the DOM content loaded line as well as the onload line listed here. And you can see that was 1.75 seconds here and a little over 5 seconds for the onload here. Another cool thing you can do is, just like with any of our graphs in Blue Triangle, you can zoom in for more detail just by clicking and dragging like that. It's another little pro tip there for using Blue Triangle's graphs. And you can reset the zoom up there in the top right. So that's the object level detail. We also have this information by domain. So here you can see the domain level activity for this particular measurement, as well as the object activity by domain. So you can see which domains are exhibiting the most activity on the page. All right, so I think that's all I had for the real user performance detail page. There was one more thing I wanted to point out. You can move around what information is in the scatter plot by just clicking this graph above, and that's going to move the shaded region to where your click was, and that'll update the graph below. All right, so that was a quick rundown of this page. I think we could probably spend almost an entire session running through all the different ways you can use the page, but for just a high-level overview of what features are available and how do you use the page, I think we're good to move on. So the next page we're going to look at is the aggregate waterfall. So the aggregate waterfall, the idea here is, instead of just looking at the waterfall for one particular page view, like we were doing on the real user performance detail page, what we're looking at here is the aggregate of hundreds or even thousands of page views, and what that looks like, aggregated over one day in this example. So by default, we'll see our domain level activity here. Of course, you get your page milestones overlaid on the graphs here, and you can click the legend here to toggle those on and off and see how they stack up. And then the object level details over here to the right. You can see how that's doing. Another super useful tool is there's a table view for each of these views. Okay, so the table view has some additional functionality where you can actually trend that particular domain. So let's look at Adobe Tag Manager, Adobe DTM, and see how that's doing over the last one day. So here we'll be able to see how many times this domain was observed, as well as the average load time and the average start time. So this is a great feature to look when you're trying to diagnose a performance issue and you narrow it down to a handful of resources or maybe one resource. You'll be able to pull up a graph like this and see what was there a spike or a dip or a drop in domain count over the period you're interested in. All right, and then down below we get the resource timings by file table. Here you can see the domain and file, as well as the number of times it showed up, the element count, and the other metrics, the resource timing metrics available here. And you can actually click into this, and that'll take you over to the domain details page. So we just clicked on that top option, which was Google's DoubleClick, and that'll take us over to g.doubleclick.net in the tag governance section. Actually, there's a lot of great information on this page, but I won't dive into that in today's training. So back over to the real user aggregate waterfall. One other feature I wanted to point out here, and that is the comparison feature. So you can run a comparison by clicking this button, change it back to the graph view. Now you're able to compare two different time periods. You're able to compare two different page names or essentially two different sets of filter options. I think what the best is to see compare two different time periods and see what's changed between the two time periods. So we're going to compare a couple of days before, and that graph is going to load over here on the right. And while it's loading, we're going to get this section in the center that shows us information about what's changed. So here we can see, the DOM interactive, the timed interactive, first contentful paint, all of that information for the left side, the right side, and then the percent change and the actual delta as well. And that's not it. We get a graph down here showing each specific domain, and you can also go to the object level detail view and view each specific file performance for the left side, the right side, and the percent change as well. So it's a really, really cool feature here to be able to do comparisons with this aggregate waterfall. All right, so the last page we're going to cover today is the Errors Explorer. So let's click there. All right, so I'm going to just get started walking through the page. So as always, we have our filter options here. So up at the top, we get errors by type, XHR errors, fetch errors, reference errors, JavaScript errors. So this is all errors that we observed over this one-day time period for these particular pages. I still have our pages selected up here from the beginning. Over to the right is the number of unique errors. So a lot of times errors, occur across various user sessions. So this is the total number that we observed, but this is the actual number of different kinds of errors, right? So this donut chart gives you an idea of what is the most common type of error, happening on my site. And then moving down the page, we get more kind of donut charts of the top locations that these errors are happening from, the top domains, as well as the top pages. Of course, I have selected all of them, so it's probably better. Let me go ahead and remove these pages. We'll reload the page here. And as you can see, that changes things a little bit here. It looks like, let's see here, the category page. Well, it looks like it shows the heavy hitters. The category page, the home page, and the PDP page do appear to be the biggest pages with the most errors. And then, of course, devices, OS, and browsers. Looks like we're having the most errors on iOS, Safari. As a matter of fact, the easier way to look at this is, obviously there's a visual here, but we also have it listed out where or what are the items with the most errors. So in terms of location, it would be California. The page would be category. The device would be mobile, iOS, and Safari. So that's probably a little easier way to look at it. It's more than just the top three, by the way. You can kind of scroll down a little bit and see the rest of the available options. So moving down the page, we get a graph over time of the error types and how many errors are happening for each error type. So it looks like, as we saw up here, it looks like most of our errors are CSP violations. However, there were a number of fetch errors at this time. So that's just some insights you can get, some quick insights you can get. And then moving down, we can see the most common errors. So we can, by default, we're sorting by the number of errors here. And you can see the top three, of course, are CSP violations. We're also getting this particular fetch error as well. So a cool thing you can do is click on this row, and that's going to take you into a totally new page that's going to give you a drill down into that specific error that you clicked on. So we're now looking at, for that particular error, the top locations it's happening at, the top pages, as well as devices, OS, and browsers. We also get a graph of how many times we've observed this error over time as well. So really cool context here for how prevalent is this error. You get percentage of total errors as well as sessions impacted over here to the left. That's really good information to understand the context around the error as far as its impact on your users. All right, so I think that's all I have for you guys today. I'm gonna pause now and check the chat and the questions. I'm gonna pull the slides back up, and I'm gonna check the questions and see if there's anything I can help answer for you guys. All right, so I see one question, and I'll go ahead and get started with that. And meanwhile, if you do have any questions, be sure to drop those into the chat or the questions window, and I can get to those shortly. All right, so the first question is file size a metric that's available? Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing I'll say probably is that due to the nature of real user monitoring and security, file size is not an easy metric to get. There's a header that's actually required called timing allow origin in order, for example, our JavaScript tag to be able to collect file size for resources on the page. But with that said, sometimes that header is set. And let me jump over to back to the portal here and show you where you could find that. So on the real user performance detail page, actually, if you scroll down and you're looking at the object level detail waterfall, so let me just scroll down to where we were here. Right. So if you're looking at the waterfall, you can switch it to a table view. And when you do that, you can see we do have a file size column here. You'll notice it's not going to always be filled in with data due to the reason I mentioned before, that needs to be set in order for us to be able to collect that information. But if we do have it, it'll be available here. With all of that said, if you're interested in tracking file sizes, there's a few things I would recommend. The first is looking at our synthetic data. And the other thing is looking at, you can actually set up SLA thresholds for third-party tags in our tag governance. And you can do that inside of tag governance in the SLA thresholds section. You can, I won't show you right now, but for the sake of time, but you'll be able to set up thresholds based on the file size of specific resources or tags, and you'll be able to see the status of that on the SLA status page as well. So it's kind of a long answer to a quick question, but there you go. All right, so it looks like that was the one question we had for today. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for today's training. So thank you everyone for your time today. If you have any more questions, we're happy to speak with you offline. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. You can reach us here in support, of course, at support@bluetriangle.com. You can also jump over to our help center and submit a request or a question to us. And our help center is at help.bluetriangle.com. And for more information about Blue Triangle product training, like how to watch past sessions or how to register for upcoming ones, be sure to check out our help center. Again, it's help.bluetriangle.com. And when you're there, just click the big button for product training. All right, guys, thanks again for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.